My name is Olivia Nelson, and I've recently hit the milestone of turning 30. Today, I want to share a pivotal moment in my life. I have an older brother named Scott, 2 years my senior. From a young age, Scott embodied what many would call a pretty boy. His features were sharply defined, and his handsome face often sparked rumors in our neighborhood about talent scouts from modeling agencies seeking him out. He was the quintessential heartthrob, likable, intelligent, and quick-witted. Our parents and the adults around us all adored him. On the flip side, I seemed to be the odd one out in our family, always carrying a bit of extra weight. Despite having similar facial features to Scott, being chubby detracted from any charm I might have had. I was reserved, not particularly engaging, and tended to keep to myself, missing out on the accolades showered upon my brother for his intelligence. It didn't take long for people to start labeling us as polar opposites, a contrast that seemed to be echoed by our parents. As we grew, the differences in treatment became increasingly evident. While Scott received praise and attention, I often felt overlooked. Hand-me-downs became my norm, even down to ill-fitting shoes that caused me to stumble more times than I care to remember. The only thing I cherished was a backpack given to me by my grandparents before they passed away, a rare gift just for me. As Scott advanced to a prestigious private middle school, my parents beamed with pride, while I found myself relegated to a public school with minimal expectations placed upon me. Money for my education was deemed too scarce, a stark reminder of where I stood in my parents' eyes. I began to question why I was the only one treated differently, but my inquiries fell on deaf ears. Puberty brought with it a growing awareness of the disparities in our household. My mother's priorities seemed to lie elsewhere, leaving me to tend to chores while she socialized with friends. Even when I sought solace in friendships, my father's retort was always the same. What about the household chores? Scott, bless him, tried to intervene on my behalf, but his efforts fell short against the indifference of our parents. As Scott focused on his high school entrance exams, his presence in our home dwindled, leaving me to navigate the tumultuous waters of adolescence alone. The absence of my parents at parent-teacher meetings became the norm, a stark reminder of where their priorities lay. In 3 years of middle school, they attended just one meeting, a telling sign of the divide within our family. When I was in my first year, my parents attended the parent-teacher meeting, but during my second year, they stopped coming. By the crucial third year, when exams were just around the corner, they still didn't show up. My homeroom teacher expressed concern about possible issues at home, but I dismissed it. Although I recognized that my situation was far from normal, I didn't face physical abuse from my parents. I struggled to articulate the ongoing emotional distress I was experiencing. Admitting that my own parents didn't seem to care for me felt too humiliating. The incidents continued, with one particularly hurtful occurrence on New Year's Eve. At the end of that year, my parents took my brother to my mom's hometown, leaving me behind. Up until then, I had always been included in these trips, but that year they told me, "You're a student preparing for exams, so stay home and study." It felt like just an excuse, as if they simply found me bothersome. Alone on New Year's Eve, I didn't want to ask my friends to hang out, as it would reveal how isolated I was. Instead, I stayed home, keeping my feelings inside. I watched the Grammys, switched to the New Year's Eve specials, and went to bed after shedding a few tears. The next morning, I was startled awake by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. It was too early for my family to be back, so I anxiously checked the doorbell camera. To my surprise, my uncle and aunt from my mom's side stood at the door. I rushed over, my hair a mess from sleep, and asked them what was going on. "Olivia, you need to leave this house," my uncle stated firmly. "We've already spoken with your mother, and we'll handle the paperwork. Don't worry." I was stunned by his abruptness and struggled to process what he was saying. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, thrown off by his demeanor. "Olivia, we want you to become our daughter, if you don't mind," my aunt said gently, her eyes filling with tears. "We don't have children of our own, but we've always thought of you as our daughter since the day you were born." At the time, I couldn't grasp the full scope of the situation. My aunt and uncle, who were unable to have children due to illness, had always doted on me whenever they visited. They cared for me deeply and had often criticized the way my parents treated me. While my parents were preoccupied with my older brother, my aunt played with me and my uncle showered me with the latest treats and adorable clothes. My fondest memories were with them, far more than with my parents. My uncle, who had just come from speaking with my parents, began by saying, "Your parents have no intention of letting you go to high school. They plan for you to start working at 16 to help fund Scott's college education. We can't ignore this, Olivia. You have the right to an education and a chance to pursue your own dreams." I was shocked and hurt by the revelation that my parents were willing to sacrifice my future for my brother's benefit. It explained why they hadn't attended any parent-teacher meetings in recent years. They simply weren't invested in my aspirations. As I crumbled under the weight of this news, my aunt and uncle knelt beside me, offering comfort. "We may not be your biological parents, and you might feel uncertain about this, but we will ensure your happiness," they assured me. Tears welled up in my aunt's eyes as she hugged me tightly, both of us overwhelmed with emotion. "Olivia, you have the right to be happy, and we should have come for you sooner. If you're okay with it, we want you to become our daughter," my uncle added, his gaze intense and earnest. As I listened to their heartfelt words, I realized this was the first time I had ever felt truly wanted by adults. Though I was just over 10 years old, I knew what I needed to choose for my own future. I made the decision to officially become their adopted daughter. Fast forward 10 years since they welcomed me into their home, my aunt and uncle have poured boundless love upon me and filled my life with countless joyful experiences. My aunt delighted in selecting clothes for me, treating me to shopping sprees on holidays, while my uncle, who had always longed for father-daughter bonding, saved a bottle of wine from the year I was born for my 21st birthday celebration. Together we embarked on memorable trips, with my uncle's childlike enthusiasm leading us to zoos and aquariums, even during my high school years. These moments were etched in my heart as irreplaceable treasures, experiences I never shared with my biological parents. Initially, I referred to them as aunt and uncle, but over time, they became my parents in every sense. Now, I address them as mom and dad. It was through them that I learned of the hurtful remarks my biological parents made when they visited, belittling my appearance and intelligence. Hearing this fueled my aunt and uncle's determination to provide me with the love and support I deserved. When my parents threatened to deny me a high school education, the idea of adoption surfaced, thanks to my aunt's sober intervention on New Year's Eve. I am forever indebted to my aunt, who rushed to my side that fateful night, and I am determined to repay my wonderful parents for their unwavering love and sacrifice. I endeavored to excel in my studies, setting a goal to build a future that would make my aunt and uncle proud. Despite the challenges I faced during my high school entrance exams, I persevered, driven by the desire to honor their kindness. Entering a prestigious public university was a significant achievement, but it was only the beginning of my journey to repay my parents' love. With dedication and hard work, I obtained a weather forecaster license during my college years and now proudly appear on television as a weather forecaster. Yet even as I pursue my dreams, my ultimate goal remains unchanged, to ensure my parents' comfort and happiness in the years to come. I wanted to make my aunt and uncle proud, so I dedicated myself to dieting and exercising. Now I've earned the nickname the Beautiful Weather Forecaster. Reflecting on my journey, I realized I always shared my brother's good looks and had the potential to be just as attractive. My aunt and uncle have always expressed pride in me, but now I feel I have truly become a daughter they can be genuinely proud of. I have so much gratitude to repay, and I'm determined to keep pushing myself to excel. Just as I was thinking about how much I've achieved, my biological parents suddenly appeared before me. "Olivia, you've grown so much. You've become such a fine young lady," they exclaimed, tears in their eyes as they embraced me. I was leaving the TV station to get into my car when this happened, and I was taken off guard. It had been so long since I'd seen them that I barely recognized them at first. "We were shocked to see you on TV. Scott said it was Olivia. We never expected you to become such a beautiful woman and a weather forecaster." "That's incredible," my father said, patting me on the shoulder as if I were still his daughter. "Yes, just as expected of our daughter. We are so proud," they continued. I couldn't hide my displeasure and glared at my parents, but they seemed unbothered by my reaction. "Since we're here, why don't we have a meal at the fancy restaurant just down the street? You must be earning a lot as a weather forecaster, right?" they continued. Their sudden reappearance felt intrusive, like they'd been waiting for me, and their suggestion of a meal at an upscale restaurant made it seem as though they were trying to freeload. I wouldn't allow them to take advantage of me. I needed to find a way to drive my parents away, to ensure they wouldn't want to intrude on my life again. As I pondered this, a plan began to form in my mind. Mom, Dad, it's great to see you. But I actually have another job today, so I can't go out to eat. Sorry, I lied smoothly. Of course, I didn't have another job lined up, but I did have a plan involving my beloved aunt and uncle. Oh, that's unfortunate, my mom remarked, a slight click of her tongue. Could you maybe share your contact information? I'm organizing a small party for my birthday soon, and I'm inviting people from the TV station. It'll be fancy, with plenty of delicious food. I'd love to invite you. Upon hearing this, my parents' eyes noticeably lit up. Really? Oh, how lucky we are, my dad exclaimed. And there will be actors there too, right? Of course, I replied smoothly, hiding my amusement. There will be actors, and it's going to be quite the event. A month later, as planned, I arranged for a birthday party at a rented venue. While the gathering was small, a good number of people attended, lured by the promise of a glamorous affair. My parents arrived, eager and waving, acting as if they wanted everyone to know they were my parents, an irritating habit of theirs. Dad, Mom, welcome, I greeted them, masking my irritation with a smile. Could you head to the dressing room right away? They'll help you with everything, from your clothes to makeup. Your outfits are lovely, but we also have rental designer clothes available. Enjoy the atmosphere while you're here. At my suggestion, my parents' faces lit up with joy, their excitement palpable. It was clear they couldn't wait to try on the designer clothes. Oh, how easily they were swayed by the allure of luxury. I hardly ever get the chance to wear these outfits. I wonder if they'll suit me, my mom remarked with a chuckle. Haha, Mom, you've put on a little weight, my dad teased. Oh, stop it, she scolded. While they exchanged banter, I offered them flattery, saying you both still look young and beautiful, so anything will suit you. It seemed they had been waiting for a compliment, and they both nodded in agreement. In the past, I feared being disliked more than I already was. I couldn't understand my parents' motives, but now it was clear they were quite superficial. They craved high quality and luxurious things, easily swayed by popular trends. Once they had their hair and makeup done, my parents returned to the party venue in high spirits. My mother wore a pale pink mini dress that exposed her shoulders, a style more suited to a younger woman. The sagging skin on her knees revealed her true age. My father chose a bright red suit with a flashy tie adorned with yellow and green geometric patterns. He was the only one in the venue wearing such a flashy outfit, even though there was no formal dress code. The clothes were indeed designer labels, but they were secondhand. I had chosen and provided the outfits myself. I wanted my parents to wear these today, as they reminded me of a family party from my childhood. When I mentioned this, neither the makeup artist nor the costume staff questioned it. In truth, I had no memories of attending such a party with my parents, but my parents believed anything labeled designer without question. In the past, my parents would heed my exceptional brother's words, so long as they weren't about me. Now, they were the ones on the receiving end of my praise, with the label of outstanding now applied to me. As the party began, it was my turn to take the stage and deliver a speech as the guest of honor. Before I went up, I addressed my parents. I have a message for both of you in my speech today, so please listen carefully, I said as I held their hands. They looked at me with surprise and asked, "What?" But their expressions remained happy as I ascended the stage. Thank you all for joining me at my birthday celebration today. I'd also like to express my gratitude to everyone who helped organize this event. I began formally. My friends teased me, calling out, "You're so formal. That's not like you." I jokingly replied, "I'm just being myself," before turning to address my parents. "They're here today, right over there," I said, pointing in their direction. The lighting staff spotlighted my parents as I continued. These are the same parents who had the audacity to appear on TV and even set an ambush for me, despite abandoning me during my teenage years. A murmur spread through the crowd at my statement, as I had never discussed my past with anyone other than close friends. "Olivia, how could you say such a thing?" my mother exclaimed, jumping up, while my father remained stunned into silence. Since I was old enough to start kindergarten, these two constantly compared me to my high-performing older brother, Scott, and always favored him over me, I explained. I was the one who never received treats, had to wear Scott's hand-me-down clothes until I was in grade school. Despite all this, I still loved my parents dearly. During middle school, they began imposing household chores on me and eventually declared they wouldn't allow me to attend high school. They wouldn't even attend parent-teacher conferences. I continued. That's when my caring uncle and aunt stepped in and decided to adopt me. Speaking about myself in this way feels odd, but it's the truth. My uncle and aunt have repeatedly reassured me with love, telling me that I am not a bad child. Their support helped me build confidence and overcome my shyness, shaping me into the positive person I am today. The contrast between my cheerful demeanor and my difficult past was striking for the audience, causing immediate murmurs of disbelief and outrage. How could they show up at their daughter's birthday dressed like that? The crowd began to criticize my parents. Unable to handle the scrutiny, my parents hummed their heads and trembled. Despite everything, I am now grateful to my biological parents. Their actions ultimately led me to find my true parents, my uncle and aunt, who enveloped me in the warmth of a loving family. My biological parents stared at me, expecting a turn in the story where they would be acknowledged as important. Instead, I offered them a quiet, smiling look. Mr. Treasure from the Daily Info, are you here? Could you make this story and the accompanying photos into an article? Consider it a birthday present for me. As I called out to my friend from the magazine, he had already started snapping pictures of my parents. Hey, stop it. Don't take pictures. My parents frantically tried to hide their faces. Even now, they couldn't face the consequences of their actions. You always made me do things I didn't want to do, even when I pleaded with you to stop, I shouted. You can't impose on others and expect to avoid consequences yourself. At my words, my mother's eyes welled up with tears. I'm sorry. If you publish this article, it will harm us, your mother and father. You wouldn't want that, would you, Olivia? I was astonished by their nerve. Did they really think I still considered them my parents? They had abandoned me, neglecting their duties as parents. My true parents are my uncle and aunt. They are the ones I see as my mother and father. I warned them never to interfere in my life again. As memories flooded back and my gratitude for my uncle and aunt swelled, tears streamed down my face. Seeing my emotional state, the attendees quickly escorted my biological parents out of the venue. This time, it was truly over. I had finally cut all ties with those individuals for good. Reflecting on my achievements and the support from my uncle and aunt, I shed a few more tears, feeling a sense of liberation and accomplishment. Following the incident, a magazine editor asked if I was okay with how things unfolded. I affirmed my decision, urging them to proceed with the story. The resulting article on my upbringing was picked up by various TV shows and quickly gained attention. Concerns about my image being tarnished were unfounded. Instead, the story painted me as a modern Cinderella making a dramatic turnaround, and my reputation soared. On the other hand, my biological parents, let's reluctantly call them that, faced severe repercussions after the story was published. They became outcasts in our community and eventually decided to move. Gossip spread to my father's workplace, forcing him to resign. My mother, who had been a homemaker, was now unemployed. My brother Scott kept me updated on their situation, revealing they were living off their savings. Though Scott had initially hoped we could live together again, he soon understood that staying with my adoptive family was the right choice for me. Scott remained a constant source of support throughout my college years, helping guide me in my studies. He ultimately chose to sever all ties with our biological parents after my story was published, jokingly stating he might only see them again at their funeral. Knowing Scott, he might not even attend that. 5 years have since passed. I married Mr. Treasure, who was working at the magazine that published my story, and we now have a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. As a mother, I am dedicated to ensuring my children are treated equally and grow up in a happy, loving environment, just as my aunt and uncle did for me, and as Scott has always watched over me from afar. I want my children to grow up kind and gentle, like my own family. Besides raising my children, I am committed to repaying the kindness shown to me by my uncle and aunt. This year, I surprised them with a trip to Oregon for our wedding anniversary, which we enjoyed with my husband and children. My aunt and uncle often tell me, "Olivia, you have your own family now. You don't have to do this." But for me, giving back is a source of joy, not obligation. Seeing their happy faces brings meaning to my life. I tell them not to steal my pleasure as I plan our next surprise, maybe a luxurious hotel stay for the whole family. There is still so much we want to do as a family.